She looked at the birthday table, full of laughter and soft lights, trying to convince herself that everything was normal. But there was an emptiness that no one else seemed to notice. He had promised he would be there, that he wouldn't miss it for anything, and yet the chair next to her remained unsettlingly empty. A delay that hurt more than just a few minutes could explain. Among memories of happy times and the weight of silence, she realized that that night would not just be a celebration, but the beginning of decisions that would change everything. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is Linda Love Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. When Nora placed the cake on the table, the room was already full. The soft lights reflected off the glasses, and the scent of freshly picked flowers mingled with the aroma of the opened wine. It was her birthday, and she tried to appear calm, but her eyes kept returning to the door. Liam had promised he would come. He had said he wouldn't miss it for anything. Those words echoed in her like a fragile echo of a past that already seemed distant. The guests laughed. Her children ran around the room, but inside her, there was an empty space, a silence that no music could fill. "Mummy, when is Daddy going to arrive?" asked Tommy, the youngest, with his blue eyes identical to his father's. He held a small paper airplane, a gift Liam had made for him at their last meeting. "Soon, darling," Nora replied, adjusting the boy's hair. "He must be stuck in traffic." But it was already almost 45 minutes late. Nora checked her phone for the 10th time. No messages. She took a deep breath and poured another glass of wine for her friend Rachel, who gave her a sympathetic look. The living room walls, decorated with family photos, seemed to mock her. Images of happier times. The wedding, the birth of Max and then Tommy, the beach vacation 3 summers ago. Back then, Liam was never late. In fact, it was always him waiting for her, with that patient smile she loved so much. When he finally arrived nearly an hour late, Nora's breath caught for a moment. Liam looked the same. Trimmed beard, subtle smile, the gaze that had always been a refuge. But there was something different, something small, almost invisible. It was only when he sat down next to her that she noticed. The ring wasn't there. The absence shone more than gold ever could. She felt her body go cold, a knot forming in her throat. She pretended to smile, continued through dinner, shared the cake with the children. But every word that came out of his mouth seemed to come from a stranger, and he looked at her as though he could no longer decipher what he saw. "Sorry for being late," he muttered as the guests distracted themselves with dessert. "Work?" "It's okay," she replied automatically, her eyes fixed on the spot where the ring should have been. Her own wedding band weighed like lead on her finger. The rest of the evening passed like a blurred film. Nora moved on autopilot, smiling, thanking people for gifts, hugging friends who were leaving. Inside her, however, a storm was brewing. They had fallen in love in a simple, almost naive way. Nora worked at the local library, and Liam would show up every afternoon to do research for his master's thesis in literature. In the beginning, everything was light. He enjoyed watching her laugh until she was out of breath. She found it amusing how he focused too much on everything. Sunday nights were long, filled with plans, promises, and conversations about a future that seemed already written. On their first date, he took her to a small cafe downtown, where they talked until the place closed. Nora still remembered the brightness in his eyes when she talked about her dream of opening a children's bookstore someday. "You will," he said with such certainty that she almost believed it. They got married in the spring, a simple ceremony in her parents' garden. They said the secret to marriage was compromise. That love endured all things, overlooked all things. They never talked about what hurt. They never mentioned the small barbs, the quirks, the silences. They thought love covered everything. For a while it worked. The children came, 2 boys, the living reflection of the hope they had at the beginning. The house was full of laughter, fatigue mixed with tenderness. There were nights when they fell asleep exhausted, holding hands, feeling that nothing in the world could break it. Max was born first, with his father's calm demeanour, and his mother's stubbornness. Tommy came 3 years later, a surprise that brought with it the energy of a hurricane. Nora left her job at the library to take care of the boys while Liam got a promotion at the publishing house where he worked. It will only be for a while, she told herself when she put the bookstore project in the drawer. The children need me now. Then, slowly, love began to creak. The little things that once seemed harmless turned into thorns. He was annoyed by her disorganization. She was hurt by his cold tone. He wanted peace. She wanted attention. Neither of them knew how to ask for what was missing without hurting the other. "Why do you never put things in their place?" Liam asked, holding a stack of books that Nora had left on the kitchen table. "Why do you never ask how my day was?" she retorted, resentment growing. The space between them on the couch was increasing. The affectionate messages during the day were becoming scarce. The goodnight kiss had become a mechanical gesture, without warmth. One day Liam thought it was time to talk, but he did not do it with tenderness. The words came out hard, sharp, without pause. "You've changed, Nora. You're always dissatisfied, always wanting more. Don't you see that I'm trying? That I work all day to provide comfort for this family?" Nora, already tired, replied angrily, "Do you think only your effort counts? What about my sleepless nights with Tommy sick, and the school meetings you always miss, and my dreams that were left behind?" What was supposed to be the beginning of healing became the start of erosion. They went to sleep after an argument. And that silence of the night was the first wall between them. Time passed and the pain did not lessen. It just became accustomed. A month later, another fight. The same words, the same poison. "Maybe I should go to my mother's house for a few days," Liam suggested after a particularly bitter argument about overdue bills and the maxed-out credit card. "Maybe you should," Nora replied, too proud to show how much it hurt her. The days were filled with noise, doors slamming, stifled sighs, footsteps that avoided crossing paths in the hallway. The home became a minefield. All that was left of the us was slowly being corroded by small, yet constant grievances. Until one night, he left. There were no screams, only the sound of the key turning in the lock and the echo of footsteps descending the stairs. Nora stood in the room, her hands trembling, her breathing rapid. The children were already asleep. The silence of the house weighed on her shoulders like lead. In the following weeks, Liam only called to speak with the kids. Nora thought he would come back, that it was just a time to breathe, but time turned into distance, and distance into habit. The boys missed him. Every night Tommy asked when their father would come home. Max, older and more perceptive, stopped asking, but his sad eyes followed Nora around the house. She started working part-time at the old library, more for mental sanity than financial necessity. Liam sent money regularly, punctual as he always was in his responsibilities. At night, alone in the bed that now seemed too large, Nora allowed herself to cry. It wasn't just the physical absence that hurt, but the feeling of failure, of having let something precious break without realizing it. When she decided to invite him to her birthday, she did so with a heavy heart. She wanted the boys to see him there. She wanted the home to have, even if just for one night, the appearance of the past. He accepted. He said he would come. But when he arrived without the ring, everything inside her crumbled. In that absence, she saw the confirmation of what she feared. He no longer saw the us as something worth fixing. The night was a theatre of appearances. Mechanical smiles, neutral words, a dance of civility between two strangers who once shared dreams. "The boys are growing up fast," Liam remarked when the last guests had left and the children were already in bed. "Yes," Nora replied, picking up forgotten glasses. "Tommy asks about you every day." An uncomfortable silence hung between them. Nora noticed how his shoulders seemed heavier, how there were new lines around his eyes. "Nora, we need to talk about our situation," he finally said, looking at his own hands. The same hands that had once held hers with such certainty. In the end, they agreed to meet in 3 days. "To talk," he said, already at the door, avoiding her gaze. After he left, Nora sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of the celebration. It seemed like a cruel metaphor for her marriage. What once had been vibrant and full of promises, now reduced to leftovers and dirty dishes. At work, 2 days later, Nora was different. The smudged mascara betrayed a sleepless night. As she typed into the library system, she heard the calm voice of Martha, an older colleague who always seemed to see what others tried to hide. "Coffee?" Martha offered, extending a mug. The staff cafeteria was almost empty, the smell of roasted beans filling the air. Outside, the light rain left the window panes foggy. Martha placed a steaming mug in front of her and waited. "Thank you," murmured Nora, wrapping her hands around the mug, seeking its warmth. "Do you want to talk about what's making you look that way?" Martha asked gently. Nora spoke, and she spoke as if finally opening a floodgate. She told everything, the beginning, the arguments, the distancing, the dinner. The words came out like overdue confessions. And when he showed up without the ring, it was as if something inside me completely collapsed, she concluded, a tear running down her face. Martha listened in silence. Then, with the serenity of someone who has lived long enough to understand the value of what is lost, she said, "Marriage is like a vase, Nora. In the beginning, it's beautiful, whole, full of promises. Each argument is a blow. A crack forms. Most people pretend not to see it. They move on, thinking the vase is still usable, that everything is fine. But the cracks remain. And when the final blow comes, the vase shatters." Nora looked at the cup in her hands and noticed that the rim had a small crack. She had never noticed it before. Martha continued, looking at the steam rising from the drink. "Resolving the argument is like gluing the crack. It's looking at it, recognizing the damage, and deciding to care for it. But we forget to glue it. We keep postponing, letting time heal what time only disguises, until the vase breaks. And when it breaks, most throw it away. But sometimes the vase can still be rebuilt. Not with the appearance it once had, but with the value of someone who has learned the price of it." The words lingered in Nora. That night, alone, she looked at the ring on the nightstand. She removed it from her finger and observed the trembling reflection of the lamp on the gold. She thought of every crack she ignored, every silence she let grow. And she decided that when she met him, she would speak differently. 3 days later, they sat across from each other, in an unassuming cafe. The same cafe where they had their first date, although neither of them mentioned this fact. Neither knew where to start. For a moment, the silence was the same as always, dense, uncomfortable. Until Nora took a deep breath and spoke. She spoke of the pain she kept, of the times she remained silent to avoid increasing the distance. She spoke of the resentments, but also of the good memories, of the promises she still missed fulfilling. There was no blame in the words. There was humanity. "I miss the person I was when I was with you," she admitted, her voice trembling but determined. "I miss the way you looked at me as if I was special." Liam listened without interrupting. His fingers fiddled nervously with the napkin, folded and unfolded countless times. When he spoke, his voice was tired but sincere. He said that he also made mistakes, that he let pride speak louder, that he felt invisible, not for lack of love, but for lack of dialogue, that the ring, forgotten in the drawer, was not the end. It was a sign that he also didn't know how to hold on to what was breaking anymore. "I took off the ring because it hurt to look at it," he confessed. "It was a constant reminder of how much I had failed, of how much we had failed each other." The tears came without warning. They weren't of despair, but of relief. For the first time in months, there was truth between them, "I am afraid," said Nora, looking at her own hands. "Afraid of trying again and still failing." "So am I," Liam replied, and for the first time that day their eyes truly met. They made no promises. They didn't talk about getting back together. They just decided to try to mend the vase, together, one day at a time. Over time, it gradually became clear what Martha meant. Mending the vase was not about erasing the cracks. It was about ensuring they remembered what each forgiveness had cost. They started with small steps. Liam resumed picking up the kids from school on Fridays. Nora invited him over for dinner at home, just to talk about the children. The conversations, once tense and formal, began to feel more natural. One night after the kids were already asleep, they sat on the porch, a cup of tea in hand, talking about the future. "I never asked what happened to your bookstore dream," Liam said suddenly. Nora smiled, surprised that he remembered. "It's tucked away, dormant but not forgotten." "Maybe it's time to wake it up," he replied, and something in the way he said it made her heart race. 2 weeks later, Liam brought a folder full of numbers, business plans, and information about small business loans. "It's just an idea," he said, almost shyly, "but I think there's still time." The children began to smile more. The house began to smell like cake again, filled with laughter and soft songs at dusk. Nora realized that love, when mature, is not made of certainties, but of daily choices. One Sunday after a family lunch, Liam asked if he could come back home. There were no grand declarations or extraordinary promises, just the silent certainty of two people who now understood the value of what they almost lost. Liam started wearing the ring again, not as a symbol of possession, but of commitment, to stay even when the feeling needs to be rebuilt with patience and humility. Sometimes they still argued. Sometimes the past still hurt. But now, when the cracks appeared, they didn't pretend not to see them. They would sit down, talk, and piece together what time tried to separate. On Nora's next birthday, the hall was full again. The soft lights, the smell of flowers, the murmur of familiar voices. This time, Liam wasn't late. He was by her side when she set the cake on the table, his hand firmly resting on her back. During the toast, he surprised her with a small package. Inside, a key and a card with the address of a commercial space in the city centre. "For your next chapter," the card said, "our children's bookstore." The vase was not the same anymore, but it was more beautiful than before. The golden marks from the mending made it unique, strong, and true. And Nora finally understood that love doesn't die with arguments. It dies when people stop trying. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.